Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome all of you back to the Chris and articles. Now, there are a few announcements I want to make before we get started today here, ladies and gentlemen. Is that you're probably wondering why I'm doing these Chris and articles again. Well, let me just explain to you very, very briefly sort of like why. The first off is that a great majority of the first set of videos kind of like got deleted along with with Reality Zone, so it sort of like makes sense that I'm filming these again anyway. Plus, owing to the behavior of Quickie, or the behavior of Chris, I should say, a lot of the articles get updated very, very regularly. I mean, let me just show you very quickly an example. Art got updated, as did fashion, music, reality, hypocrisy, remorse, sexuality, stress, death, censorship, the law, race, socialization, brand loyalty, copyright, work, English, oratory, Spanish, writing, health, science, sex, television, video games. Now, technically, some of these did get added on here. This is the most recent one that got added onto here, mental health care, along with coping under the psyche section. But I'm going to be, since some of these need to be updated anyway, as well as some of these are going to have to be refilmed, I will make sure to get to that in when the time comes. Now, with that being said, we've got today's article to focus on. And just before we get into this one, I'm going to have to make some very, very important things that I have to tell every single one of you before we get started. I'm no doctor. I'm absolutely, even if I claim to be a doctor, and even if I claim to know any knowledge whatsoever based on Chris's condition and of every single thing that has happened to him and stuff that he's caused for himself, don't take what's happening as fact. I'm simply referring to you what's been said on the Quickie to you guys. And again, even if I was in a physical position to offer Chris any psychiatric health care, well, it's not that I wouldn't turn him down, but it's for him to seek out the advice for himself. You have to understand is that Chris is, despite what Rob Bell said, he is technically an adult. He's technically a man. And unfortunately, well, from my perspective, is that sometimes you've got to be the one to ask for help. You haven't got to rely on everybody else to help you out. You've got to be able to ask if you need further assistance. You can't just rely on everyone else to assume, as it were. Assumptions, assume, is a word that quite in my world is not even acknowledged in the dictionary. If I assumed I knew what you guys were thinking about, it could easily be wrong. You don't assume that you guys know what I'm thinking about, because I could be thinking about something completely different. You either ask me what I'm thinking about, and then I will tell you. I mean, let's face it, ladies and gentlemen. Even if we don't live in the same country, even if we don't live in the same time zone, even if, despite all of these things, even if we didn't speak the same language, communication is the key in a lot of these circumstances, and there's no reason why we can't tell what others about this. So that's just to give you guys a reason why I absolutely abolish the words assume and assumption and all derivatives of that phrase. Now, with that being said, let's get this started. Chris and mental health care. Chris in 2008. My current church can help me a lot better than any professional because God and Jesus supports them as well. And Chris in 2018, in 10 years' time. I am only going to say this once for those who may think me as delusional, crazy, or shit like that. You don't need to say it, Chris. We could already figure that out. I am not delusional, crazy, or anything of the sort. I have my own magic powers that I am still learning about for myself from my family and allies. I've already talked with psychiatrists and therapists years ago, so any new such meetings would be a very moot point. No, Chris, it's because he says he's talked, but he hasn't listened to psychiatrists or therapists. Chris has a troubled relationship with psychology and psychiatry. He claims that he is held down by the school psychologist in grade school while his screams were recorded and was forced to see a psychologist for anger management classes after being kicked out of Piedmont, Virginia Community College. Chris has refused to see a psychologist of his own violation in the past, opting to see Rocky Shoemaker, his pastoral counselor, instead. The sole exception occurred in 2016, when Chris went to a gender psychologist over his transgender issues. Chris's various runs-in with the law have resulted in mandated therapy, such as the therapeutic docket. However, Chris has failed to adjust his behavior from such sessions, I should say. And as you can see right here, there is a lot. So let's do this one at a time. I might even have to split this up into 2 parts if it comes to that. The problems with Chris. In his own mind, Chris claims to be, well, autistic. That's just fact right there. Chris claims to be autistic, homophobic as a genuine phobia, and a victim of noviophobia, a made-up phobia of girls having boyfriends. He also diagnosed himself with dissociative identity disorder in the August 30th Captain's Log, although he later revealed in Mailbag number 4 that it was a lie to momentarily derail the trolls. Once again, Chris has proved that he had no understanding of how serious mental disorders can be. Pretending to be crazy is an odd sort of catch-22. It's no secret that Chris has always had a very childish mindset and views growing up as some sort of epic, arduous challenge, but it wasn't until a conversation with Casey, which I have covered before, that we knew just how serious this was. According to Chris, as a child, he never had any serious idea of what he wanted to be when he grew up, something all healthy children consider at one point or another. Nor did the thought of becoming an adult ever truly cross his mind. This implies that Chris may have thought that he would remain a child forever. Chris also seems to be at a level of incompetence that prevents him from realizing how incompetent he is. A Cornell University psychology journal details this phenomenon. When people are incompetent in the strategies they adopt to achieve success and satisfaction, they suffer a dual burden. Not only do they reach erroneous conclusions and make unfortunate choices, but their incompetence robs them of their ability to realize it. A disturbingly accurate account of Chris's reaction to reality. The 2004 survey. The psychiatrist who complied a survey of Chris's issues following his troubles at PVCC in 2004 echoed the diagnosis of autism that Chris received sometime in his youth, and took note of an obsessional quality to his preoccupation with finding a girlfriend. He also administered a Flostein test, a brief questionnaire designed to detect cognitive impairment. Chris racked up a perfect score. You know, actually, out of interest for that, some of you might remember that I took a bipolar disorder sort of questionnaire a couple of months ago, and I scored a perfect score on that as well. That's not to say that I'm not self-diagnosing myself with anything of the sort, but until I actually had like any proper assessment, which I still have not seen about, I have absolutely no idea whether this is a genuine problem I have. But a lot of people have strongly advised me not to find out. But if that becomes any more of a problem in the future, I'll make sure to actually do that for myself. Indicating no problems with his memory or basic information processing abilities. On the Global Assessment of Functioning, the doctor rated Chris a 70, roughly between an average adult and someone with socially debilitating mental illness. Late onset gender dysphoria. History of medication. According to the 2004 psychiatric survey, at some point in his life, Chris was prescribed the antidepressant medication Imprimine. It's not clear when he was prescribed the drug or for what exact reason, but it was likely sometime in his younger days. Since the advent of more sophisticated antidepressant drugs like Prozac in the late 1980s, the use of Imprimine to treat depression and other psychological disorders has grown less and less common. The same document notes that as of 2004, Chris has been taking the antidepressant Paxil for 4 years in order to deal with his stress and anger issues. One of the survey's recommendations was an increase in his daily dose of the drug, but it's not clear how long Chris continued taking it afterward. In Mailbag 13, he explained that he had switched to a different medication in order to avoid some of Paxil's side effects, the ones that only hit adults. However, in his 2004, he would have been at least 22 at that age. However, in his 11th call with Casey, Chris said that the drug he switched to from Paxil is paroxetine, since Paxil is just one of paroxetine's several trade names and not a different. So he took the same drug; it was just under a different name. It seems that Chris is still taking the same medication, only under a different appellation. Chris didn't specify what side effects Paxil caused him, but his language suggests some sort of a sexual dysfunction. Paxil may have been making it difficult for Chris to achieve orgasm. If his current antidepressant is still paroxetine, or at least another SSRI, then it might explain why it took him around 20 minutes in order to climax when he cybered with Julie. I don't technically know too much about whether or not antidepressant drugs can cause sexual dysfunctions, because I've never been on anything like that. Most of the medication I've ever took was mostly for skin and mostly for bone impairments when I've broken bones in the past, but nothing to do with antidepressants. Because if it's anything to go by what the medication Chris has took, I would say that the side effects are, if anything, more deadly than they're worth. Any of Paxil's again, that's purely my opinion. It's not the same for anyone else. Another of Paxil's most notable side effects is the potential for substantial weight gain, which couldn't have mixed well with Chris's diet and sedentary lifestyle. Past instances of professional help or lack thereof. One of the most frustrating elements of Chris is his adamant refusal to take help from any source. In the aftermath of his suspension from PVCC, his evaluators repeatedly recommended further counseling and psychiatric treatment, but Chris and his parents refused. It seems that Bob thinks that the world of mental health hasn't evolved past the turn of the century treatment of straitjackets and lobotomies. The only thing close to therapy that Chris has ever had was a compulsory anger management class, and we all know how much good that did. About the only authority figure he listed to was Rocky Shoemaker, his pastoral counselor. He claimed that he had no need of psychotherapy because his pastor is better at helping him than anyone with. Years of training and experience in helping people with psychiatric problems. Chris and Rocky parted ways around 2011. He's shown repeated disregard for the authority of health professionals. It is suspected that even if Chris received professional help, he would disregard most of it and undermine the therapy. It seems... You know what? I wonder if it's... And I've never actually thought about this before, but people who undermine therapy, particularly the things that Chris does, is it possible to have people like Chris blacklisted from those sort of therapies because of him consistently looking down on professionals like that? And I know technically that's a very unethical thing to do, but I think it's the only thing to there are certain things that need to drive home the whole point about why Chris's behavior is unacceptable in the most of times. I don't know exactly how much good that would ever do, but a mandatory anger management class isn't gonna do nearly enough as to actually punish somebody and reprimand them for what they've done. Because when you think about it, the whole Sonic Boom Gate, Chris still didn't get arrested, he still didn't spend any time in prison, and he's still out there in the world, or alone in his house, making the most mundane and futile threats to anything that crosses his mind. It seems Chris only acknowledges his personal flaws if they get him pity or to demonstrate that he's beaten them already. Notice how often Chris claims to have won the battle over autism, only to fall back on "I have autism" as an excuse. Similarly, he wrote to Nintendo Power magazine to tell them he conquered his noviophobia, only to say later that his fear came back like a boomerang. Regardless of how blatantly stupid his actions are, and they are, regardless of how often trolls, including a 13-year-old boy and con artists such as the Idea Guys, trick him into doing horrible, horrible things, regardless of how any mental health worker worth his salt would pin Chris down like a butterfly to get a chance to crack open his impenetrable shell of fail, Chris will carry on as usual, justifying away everything that would inconvenience him even slightly. Chris has no problem telling other people to seek professional help. However, in the mailbag, he has occasionally responded to his detractors with retorts like, "Go see a psychiatrist." Funnily enough, were Chris to ever see a psychoanalyst, he or she would probably see this as a classic Freudian projection. Let's just check on Freudian projection just for a second, right? Oh yeah, I think I've covered like this part before, so I think we'll just like move on from this. Nathaniel, and this is like all the instances coming up of Chris and his mental health. Nathaniel Green Elementary School. When Chris attended NGES, there was an incident where he was supposedly restrained or molested, depending on whom you talk to. It has been claimed that by Bob that they wanted to send Chris to an institution. What they meant was likely a place where Chris would see professionals who would work with Chris's problems as opposed to teachers who deal with normal students. What Bob probably thought is that he would be sent to a nut house. Either way, something that could have done some good in his early development didn't happen. I've talked very briefly about sometimes I would have times out to actually speak to people who would speak to people who were developing with autism themselves, and that technically wasn't so much like mental health care, but it was like, and I don't particularly know what like the whole deal. Either way, I felt like it did me some kind of good. I remembered them for what they were worth. Mary Lee Walsh, oh boy. Although not a mental health professional, Walsh has experience at dealing with a large body of students and their individual problems. She has also written a book on coping with college life. Despite her advanced knowledge and experience, Chris chose the better path of cursing her and putting her low on his scale of respect. Psychiatric papers. Following his outburst towards Mary Lee Walsh, Chris was sent to a psychiatrist for evaluation. The resulting papers easily show a number of things, most of which can easily be told by trolls themselves. Another interesting thing is that, despite the encouragement to follow up on this, Chris's parents refused to on the account of insurance problems. The documents note that at some point, Chris received psychiatric evaluation at the Center for Learning Potential in Mount Sidney, Virginia, a small town northwest of his home in Charlottesville. They don't say when this took place, but given the location of the center, it was likely either during his elementary school years or sometime after the Chandlers moved back to Charlottesville in the summer of 2000. Anger management and the shrink. Following his encounter with Mary Lee Walsh, he was ordered to take anger management classes. The only thing that seemed to arise from it were complaints that he had to pay to see a professional. And, well, he still can't control his anger. There's very little information about his anger management classes, as it occurred in the pre-ed days, and is only mentioned in a few old documents of Chris that have surfaced. He's never really talked about it since, and it's never come up in comics or videos. Whether or not he actually went at all is a very good question. Rocky Shoemaker. Religious institutions are fonder of providing counseling services to all members of their congregations, sometimes unwisely as a method of hammering them with doctrine to solve their problems, sometimes beneficially by giving them a person to talk to for free or referring them to a real professional if necessary. Whether Rocky is generally beneficial or harmful to the people who came to see her is uncertain, but she is certainly admired for her past work. What remains certain is that she was probably not the best solution for Chris because, 1. He considered her to be a perfect, all-encompassing alternative to a qualified professional. 2. He barely listened to anything she says. That's a big one there. 3. He misconstructed everything she said, accepting advice that he liked and ignoring any advice he didn't like. She told him about his past habits being unacceptable. Thank you, Miss Shoemaker. But Chris remained as determined as ever to be a total idiot. Although she put a stop to trolling plans, his behavior remained the same. If anything, that got worse when you think about it. She also told him it would be a good idea to stop posting videos on YouTube since they only fed the trolls. That hasn't worked out, has it? About the only thing that he took away from the sessions is that he can fuck someone before they are married. Right. That's the only thing he got out of that? Okay. Anyway, where were we? Relationship management classes. Chris mentioned in a video from October 2009 and told Casey in a phone call in September 2009 that he had been taking some relationship management classes. Undoubtedly, Chris felt that he had found some form of real-life date ed. In reality, Chris came upon a class meant for couples who wanted to manage their already established relationships as opposed to finding out how to get into one. You know, you usually look into what the classes have to offer before you go to them, but that seemed way too much for Chris to realize, did it? White Knights and Trolls. It doesn't take a lot of effort for anyone to see that Chris has virtually no common sense. Likewise, common sense being rather common, White Knights and Trolls alike are often quick to point out that most of what Chris does is stupid, insane, or socially abnormal. To put it bluntly, he doesn't get it. As a result, many trolls have become armchair psychologists, pondering why exactly he doesn't get it. It doesn't matter what they come up with, the result is always that Chris doesn't listen to anyone if he doesn't want to. Some White Knights like Vivian G and Ishel have gotten so fed up with Chris's adamant refusal to improve himself or heed advice that they turn troll or ween instead. Court-mandated therapy from 2011 assault and battery case. The conditions of Chris's plea bargain in July 2012 required him to undergo psychiatric treatment and evaluation, but it seems to have had little effect. Why? Court-mandated therapy from 2014 pepper spray case. Chris makes mention of therapy in his video Group Embargo on GameStop, Best Buy, and Simmons shopping centers, and it was also reported by observers viewing his July 23rd court hearing. The mental health group he attended was On Our Own of Charlottesville. Gender psychologist. During 2016, Chris met with a gender psychologist who affirmed to him that he is a transgender. Court-mandated therapy from 2018 mall trespass case. Chris was directed to the therapeutic docket program and required to meet with a psychiatrist and therapy group between July 2018 and April 2019. However, he failed to benefit from the resources, instead retreating further into his imaginary world and the bad actors validating his beliefs. Dr. Wolf. Chris acted out a therapy session with fictional Brony character Dr. Wolf in the February 2019 video, A Moment with Dr. Wolf, Chris Chan, and Greater Struggles. I'm going to have to do that video again as well, aren't I? And there's also things down here as well. The autism, what I have to do again, autism papers, Asperger's, dreams, technically I think I have not covered before, but it might be worth doing something as well. And yeah, there's a lot of things that go into this. In fact, there's a whole sub-article about Chris's health that I will definitely have to redo again, because there's almost an entire section as well when it comes to Chris's health overall. But there is so much, in case some of you guys have missed this. So anyway, that's just that. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that was Chris and mental health care. Now it's very, very important. Well, I suppose when it comes down to if you want to talk about Chris and his mental health care, is that even if I reckon, you know what I really recommend, ladies and gentlemen, if Chris had any thought of his own when he was a child, ignoring his parents' influence, or just before his parents influenced him, I reckon Chris would have loved absolutely nothing more to have taken some advice, to have talked about some of the things that happened, particularly when he was like held down at Nathaniel Green. I reckon Chris would have absolutely have benefited from stuff like this. Maybe it wouldn't have made him perfect, but you know what? It might have made him just a little bit better. It might have benefited his behavior into him understanding exactly why why and what was going on. Now that, unfortunately, we will never know exactly whether that would have any effect, because, and I don't know whether or not Bob really did think of like institutions, i.e. places to aid and, you know, aid people who had very serious psychiatric issues. However, there's always something very, very interesting as well that's just like come into my mind in the last few moments when talking about Chris and his mental health care. Even if Chris was 100% willing to make, if somebody went up to him and told him, we can make your life better, we can help you, Chris, we can make your life better, just like that. And all you had to do was just listen to us, and you would have to, well, basically, and I'm not talking about some of the things the Idea guys did. I'm talking about things that, you know, don't concern the invasion of Quickville. I'm talking about stuff that would help Chris see the light, or at least shine some light on his situation. Even if people were willing to do that, I still am absolutely sure Chris would not take this advice. And here's why I am absolutely adamant he will not take this advice. And it's one reason and one reason only. Chris is far too happy. He is far too comfortable. He is far too satisfied, as it were, with life as it is already. Because, let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, Chris's life is shambolic, to say the least. He lives in squalor. He lives in filth. He lives in dirt. He lives with ailing health, failing health, deterioration, and with the burden that his situation will probably never ever get better. You can almost say with practical certainty that if there was any hope for Chris before, let's say 10 years ago, well, it's completely gone. Any hope Chris might have had to, you know, reprimand or, you know, mend his ways or do anything of the kind, then with everything that's happened in this last 10 years, it's virtually impossible for Chris's life to ever get better. I'm saying that right now. I do not think Chris's life is ever going to get better, because if he wanted things to get better, he would have realized or acknowledged a very long time ago that nobody was just going to wave a magic wand and make things better for Chris. Why is it, ladies and gentlemen, that there are people like me, and probably people younger than me, probably as young as 14, 13, 15, that are perfectly capable of understanding more about the world than I think Chris has done in nearly 40 years? Why do I feel so adamant that whatever Chris says, does... I'll tell you what, I've got a better idea. Let's see what he's saying right now on Twitter, because I think he updated it over like a... Let's see, where's Chris? Let's see. Alright, how do I prove astral projection intangible proof to be able to satisfy you? Mama has astral projected many times. I hope as well, therefore you can stop being downing me, stupid trolls. So apparently, Chris's idea of, again, of being satisfied is to continually say that he's okay, and that he has psychic powers and that he can do all this. That's his idea of being comfortable. His idea of being comfortable is being in the same situation, getting worse, not better. And for him, that's absolutely fine. But listen, here's an interesting thing I want to point out to you, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't know how well this is going to go down, so I may as well just say it right now. It's not for me to say that Chris's life is better. It's not for me to say it's worse. It's not really up to anyone else to say whether or not. Chris is a grown man, and I'm a grown man in my own sense. So I may as well just hold up my hands and say, you know what? Let's just leave Chris to it. And maybe, you know what? That's ultimately what is going to happen to Chris in years to come, because eventually, if people don't get outright bored of, watching Chris's life literally rot before our very eyes, we'll just return to our own lives and prioritize on more important things than watching a 38-year-old man's life wither away to nothing. There's absolutely no way, if anybody was trying to convince him before then, well, here we are. We are almost approaching the very end of the road, ladies and gentlemen. And if Chris didn't want any help before or any help afterwards, he would have actually sorted out himself. It's funny as well. It's like a lot of the things post Rocky Shoemaker have been court-mandated stuff, aka reactions to the things Chris has done in the real world have only this. You get what I'm trying to say, is that the only treatment Chris is getting is stuff that he himself has caused, and he is mandated to see this stuff. He would not have seen this stuff unless he had any other option, which again suggests to me that Chris thinks that he's fine, and there is nothing that anyone can convince him otherwise. I refer to you back what he just said on Twitter about him claiming to have astral projectional powers, and somehow surprised that people doubt his sincerity. Well, you know what? You can doubt his sincerity all you want, and you know what? There's no doubt a lot of people doubt Chris's sincerity anyway. But hear me out when I'll give you guys a piece of my sincerity. I'm not here to force my kindness onto Chris. I'm not here to make his life any worse. I'm here literally to document and to give some sort of impression about what somebody who has Asperger's syndrome himself thinks about other people like Chris. And given that Chris does not like people with Asperger's syndrome very much, well, he can think whatever the hell he wants about me, because you know what? Unlike what he said prior on another part of the quickie, is that he claims that people wish they were like Chris. Well, to be honest, ladies and gentlemen, I think you and I have got far more going on inside our left toenail than they do in Chris's body for the last 38 years. And my friggin' right foot is completely numb from the kneecap down. I can't feel anything in this leg whatsoever, but I still reckon there's still millions of things going on right there than Chris has got up here. I'm not saying, of course, Chris is, retarded or anything like that. It's the things he does, raise an eyebrow in many cases, and the things and the way he resorts to, project this double. It's nothing short of appalling. I think it's just occurred to me, ladies and gentlemen, the thing about health, and given the things that Chris has said about COVID-19 in the past, I reckon, because I don't particularly think the US has officially enforced that everybody who goes into a shop has to wear a mask. I reckon if they make that compulsory, Chris is going to throw yet another tantrum, and his comments about COVID-19 will be exactly the same as they were 4 months ago. I can guarantee that 100%. If he didn't seem to show any self-awareness or care before, what makes you think that he's going to show any now, at this point in his life? So anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed Chris and mental health care, courtesy of the Quickie. Please make sure to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below, and I hope to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye for now.